welcome back, everybody, to the Stadium Journey podcast. Thanks for listening. First off, before I get started with my spiel, I apologize for my voice. It's kind of going in and out. We'll see what happens. It's a mystery. So check out our website. Oh, it's Halloween. As we're recording this, it's Halloween, by the way. So thanks, Dan. Check out our website, stadiumjourney.com. We are the world leader in sports travel information.
I can't find my phone.
We've got reviews of over 2,500 stadiums from around the world, all in one place at your fingertips. Check us out on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Threads. The handle is at Stadium Journey. Like, share, and follow. To find episodes of the Stadium Journey podcast, simply type in HIAC Talk Radio Network wherever you look for your favorite podcast. We will be there. If you're looking to watch the podcast, go to our YouTube channel, Stadium Journey, once again. If you want to be part of our studio audience, join us every other Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern at danlaw.tv. Mm-hmm. Hey, the gang's here, all here tonight. Dave Cotney's with us. Follow him at ProFan9. Mark Viquez can be found at Ballpark Hunter, not the Ballpark Hunter. He is the Ballpark Hunter, but find him at Ballpark Hunter, just to clarify things. The above average comedian Dan Colachico's here. Follow him at DanLaw83. And I am Paul Baker. You can follow me at PuckmanRI. All right, so tonight's show, we have had some people on the show who are doing some unique things with college football, like trying to visit all the FBS football stadiums. But did you know there is another whole level of Division I football out there? And some of the stadiums that those teams play in, they are more historic and more impressive than anything you're going to find in the FBS. And to boot, they play a real championship tournament, not this 14 pretend little thing that everybody likes to think is the playoffs. So joining us tonight to talk about the stadiums of the FCS, the championship division, is our friend and Stadium Journey correspondent, Lloyd Brown. Lloyd, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me back. Hey,
so before we start, I want to give a public shout out to Lloyd, because Lloyd is like our Swiss Army knife at Stadium Journey, man. When we have a quest, and you know what, Lloyd, sometimes you take these on yourself, these crazy journeys on yourself. We've had Lloyd on talking about joining Club 124, which he is a member of. This year, Lloyd took it upon himself to fill in all the gaps we had in our FCS coverage. So you have gone to some out-of-the-way places this year, Lloyd, have you not?
I have been to Montana, Minnesota, Louisiana, go to Alabama this weekend. Let's see, I go to Utah in late November. So, yeah, I'm putting some miles on it.
Yeah, that is not a very convenient road trip at all.
No, airlines are glad to have me, though.
So yeah, we are going to talk about the FCS. So Lloyd, counting the ones you've been to this year, how many FCS stadiums have you been to?
Oh, probably around 40 over the years. Okay, I mean, obviously since Labor Day, I've been gone every week. So, you know, I've done about 9 so far this year. Nice. But I'd say over the years, you know, about 40, because a lot of them are in my area, my southeastern area, the Southern Conference. They're as close as Macon. There's several that are over in Alabama. So a lot of them are very convenient to where I live. So they're not all flights. A lot of them are drives.
Nice. So between the panel here, I think we're going to have a good half of the FCS covered. I mean, I've done the whole New England area plus a couple in New York State. Mark, how about you? Have you been to a few FCS?
Oh yeah, I was Saluki Stadium, Butler. Yeah, I think I made a list. I think I've been to about 10 of them. Is like Ball State and
nice.
No, is Ball State FCS?
Is FBS.
That's FBS. Never mind. But yeah, Butler, Salukis, Indiana State Memorial Stadium. Oh God.
A lot of the Illinois ones. A lot of the Illinois, Western Illinois, Eastern Illinois.
I went to one where Roma went to. I guess that's Eastern Illinois. That was a few years ago. That's about a 2.5 hour drive for me. Yeah, I think I did a count. I think there was 10 that I've been to.
All right, so 40, 50, 65.
Yeah, Salukis. But yeah, I went to the Salukis this year. That was the one stadium that had not been visited since about 2012. So got that out of the way.
Dave, have you dropped down to any of the FCS stadiums? No. You're our man for the FBS.
Zero.
Oh, Princeton.
Hey, you know what?
Princeton's one.
That's Princeton's one, absolutely. So between us, we got about half. Because Lloyd, how many are there? Do you know off the top of your head? There's about 130.
There's 128.
All right, so yeah, so
and
we're about halfway.
129 next year.
Nice. So
we'll have to go back out again. Actually, we won't, because David Welch went and did the University of West Georgia, which is over in Carrollton. And so we will have that one before it even joins the FCS.
Well, man, it might not count. It might still have to get out there.
Oh, Valpo? Been to Valpo? Okay, yeah, this list keeps growing.
Nice. So anyway, should we start our conversation by highlighting the differences between
Eastern Kentucky, Western, yeah. Okay.
Yes, Dan.
The other Lloyd. Lloyd Rothwell said, "Good day, everyone. Nice to see my friend and all-around good bloke, Lloyd Brown, back on."
Hey, Lloyd, thanks for joining us all the way from Australia.
Is it possible to be a good bloke? I thought that was an insult to be a bloke.
A bloke is a bad thing?
I don't know. A bloke a bad thing? I don't.
Lloyd, is a bloke a bad thing?
Get on that, Rothwell. Is a bloke a bad thing?
Yeah, Rothwell, I need to know, man.
Of course, he's going to say no, because he's not going to. Yes,
I don't think it's a bad thing.
Lloyd.
Yeah.
You're a good bad.
I think you could do both on that one.
That sounds Australian. You're good and bad. I don't know.
Anyway, it's a good thing. He said it's a good thing.
Okay.
He said it's a good thing.
Okay, well,
Mr. Koch also said, "I've been to 16 FCS venues, although one of them, James Madison, is now FBS."
Nobody asked you, Gregory. Well,
That's
Gregory,
mean.
why aren't you on the panel, man?
Oh, don't be
anyway,
don't be mean.
Anyway,
to our
back
listener.
on topic. Dave, keep us on topic. That's your job in this panel.
All right.
What are the differences between the FBS and the FCS?
Okay, well, first of all, FCS stands for Football Championship
Subdivision.
Subdivision.
That's a good Rush song.
Okay, and basically what we're talking about, it is a Division I level program. Number one, it's not Division II or Division III. It is at the same level as far as Division I, but it's one step down from the FBS stadium. So really what we're usually talking about is a much smaller school. Some of these are church schools. There are some state schools that are involved, but they're in smaller markets like South Dakota, Montana, Idaho, those types of areas. And it really does have a real good geographic spread. Now, I guess really one of the main things has to do with the area of finances. Number one, now, a lot of people have thought that FCS doesn't give scholarships, and they actually do scholarships. They're probably at a smaller level of scholarships as far as number of scholarships, but the only league that doesn't do the athletic scholarships is the Ivy League. So then there's another league because of financial situations, and it's called the Pioneer League. And the Pioneer League are usually some of the newer schools, the ones that don't have the deep pockets, and those schools are all in the same league because they don't offer scholarships. So it's more, a comparative set of teams that they're playing against. Now, I would say the main difference as far as towards the end of the season is that there is a playoff system in place. And they do a 24-team playoff, okay? Those would be league champions, and then they also have some at-large for teams that don't win their league, but maybe 9-2. They may have only lost to the team that won their division. And so they do a 24-team tournament, and that starts actually on Thanksgiving weekend. So as soon as, we're only really about 3 weeks away from them being into their playoffs. Their finals are held in January. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead and finish your thought first.
Well, the finals are held down in Texas, and they're held at the home of the Dallas FC soccer program. And so that has been down there for about the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I was
And
going
one
to
of
say
the
that's
reasons they have
relatively
it
new.
there
Yeah.
is that there has been a history in the past with the FCS of one of the teams that's playing in the championship playing on their home field. And so they felt like that was an unfair advantage. So by going to a soccer stadium that none of the football teams are based at, that allows them to, be an even field for both sides.
Yeah, it's been held in Frisco, Texas for the last few years.
Yes.
But before then it was yeah, well, like you said, it was a home field advantage. I have had the good fortune to go to an FCS playoff game at the University of New Hampshire football stadium that seats about 9,000, 10,000 people. And I think there was actually 16,000 people there for this game. It was an incredible atmosphere. A lot of fun. So
yeah, they've had it at Georgia Southern when they were an FCS school. 2 of their 3 national championships they played on their home field. So University of Tennessee at Chattanooga has hosted several years, and then they've had some. I'm trying to remember some of the other locations have been, but as far as that is held in January of each year and is really well attended. Really, it's a big party. It's not like the Super Bowl. You don't necessarily have to have a rooting interest in the 2 teams because the party is really why people go. So it's a pretty wild situation down there. So that would be the main situations that make it different from the FBS.
Okay.
Now, there are a couple of leagues that do not participate in the FCS playoffs, and those would be the Middle East Athletic Conference and also the Southwestern Athletic Conference. And those are the 2 HBCU conferences that are in the FCS. The reason why they don't take part in the regular playoff system is that they're tied in with the Celebration Bowl. The Celebration Bowl is basically the Super Bowl for the HBCUs.
Oh,
it's
nice.
held here in Atlanta each year, and it's in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So you have the champion from the MEAC, which is the Atlantic, basically along the Atlantic seaboard up to Virginia. And then you have the SWAC, which is along the Gulf Coast, are the 2 conferences. The champion of each of those 2 leagues plays in the Celebration Bowl.
They're like, we don't need you guys. We got our own game.
And then the Ivy League doesn't play any kind of postseason play because of academics.
They're jerks. Snooty. What you got, Dave?
So all those differences, and like I'm totally coming from ignorance here. So I'm the cynic. You're gonna have to sell me today. So I think it's fair to say that the differences between an FCS experience, like from a fan's perspective, and let's say like a Power 5 school is pretty obvious, right? Like the difference between Georgia and Alabama or versus like Grambling is going to be pretty massive.
Right.
But I think that the experiences, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but they would probably be similar to like a Group of 5. So schools like that are in the MAC, like Central Michigan or Buffalo or Western Michigan, Ball State, whatever. So as a fan,
why can I not say Ball State without giggling?
Ball.
I didn't say Ball State
because I'm very immature. That's why.
You didn't even giggle there when you said Ball State. But as a fan, like, how is going to an FCS game going to be different than like a MAC game or a Sun Belt game or something like that?
Okay, well, obviously, as you said, size makes a difference. Now there are some big stadiums, such as Tennessee State plays in the stadium that the Nashville NFL team plays in. You also have the Yale Bowl, which seats 61,000. Now, I'm not sure how long it's been since Yale's drawn 61,000 people to their stadium.
Only when Harvard's there.
And then we also have Jackson State, which when Dion was there that seats over 60,000 people, and they did fill it when Dion was there. Now, I'm not sure, how many people it's going to draw this year, but there are some bigger stadiums, but I would say the average stadium in the FCS level is going to be, and I'll say at the upper range, 15 to 20,000 seats. Okay. There are a lot of them, they go down as low as 2,000 seats in an FCS stadium. For instance, if you're familiar with Pittsburgh, Duquesne, they're the one that has a 2,000 seat stadium. Why? Because it's on top of a cliff in downtown
Got a
Pittsburgh.
pretty cool setting at Duquesne, though.
It's a very unique setting. No stands on one side of the field. The other side is where the stands are, but that's also the cliff side of the field. And it's got academic buildings on each side of the stadium. So it's a very, very unique setting. At the other range, again, you have some of the state schools. You've got some of the Sacramento States. Sacramento State, by the way, beat Stanford this year. So there are situations where FCS schools do play a bigger school and actually win the games. So part of it, of course, is size, number of people that attend the game. Where I think it does compare to some of the bigger schools is the tradition. These schools have a lot of tradition. A lot of these programs have been going from 1900s, 1895. So they have a long history of tradition. As you said, y'all, everybody's been to some of them. And I think you would agree that Ivy League schools have a lot of tradition tied in with their games.
Well, let's talk about some Ivy League and some tradition, because one FCS school in particular is really responsible for the game of football being played the way it is today. Because back around the turn of the century, I'm not talking 2000, I'm talking 1900. Football was considered a very violent sport, and actually there were some deaths on the field, and the powers that be were deciding, well, how can we make this game a little safer so it just doesn't get outlawed altogether? And they were considering a whole lot of different rule changes, and one of them was making the field bigger. But who was one of the biggest powers in college football at the time? Harvard. Now, if you've ever seen Harvard Stadium, it's a giant concrete horseshoe. It was the first reinforced concrete stadium ever built. And obviously, because, you got a big concrete horseshoe, you're not going to be able to expand the field inside that horseshoe without tearing the whole thing down. So Harvard, being one of the powers in the sport at the time, said, nope, we're not widening the field. And so instead of taking that rule change, they decided to adopt the forward pass, which really made football less like rugby and more like the game we all enjoy today. So you can thank an FCS school for that.
Right. I mean, I went to a couple of homecoming games this year, and, they do the floats, they have the concerts, they have the cheerleaders. And, yes, it's at a smaller scale, but it's still a lot of really deep tradition within those schools. It's kind of interesting. You had mentioned, as far as age of some of the stadiums and how old Harvard is. Just was looking up, there are 8 stadiums in the FCS that are 100 years old or more. Okay.
8.
By the same token, there are 11 new stadiums since 2010 in the FCS. So they have new things coming aboard. Like I was at Davidson for a football game. Their stadium's 100 years old. Next year, they move into a brand new stadium. Now, you may wonder about that, because how many people do you think go to Davidson College? You could put the entire school in about 2 sections.
It's like 5,000.
Nope, 2,000. 2,500 students at the school.
When Davidson was in the
basketball,
when Steph Curry was there, they actually offered every student travel and tickets to go to the Elite 8 Sweet 16 games, which were in Detroit.
So you take the football team out of Davidson and you decrease their enrollment by 10%.
It's a very academic school, but it has a lot of tradition. It's a lovely little campus. It's just north of Charlotte. And so and I'm really looking forward to going back next year and seeing the new stadium.
So, did you know, Lloyd, you were talking about some of the old stadiums. I think there are only 4 football stadiums in the country that are designated as National Historic Landmarks. Do you know what anybody in the panel want to guess the 4?
I would guess they're up in your area of the country.
Yale Bowl would be
No,
one.
only 2. Yes,
Harvard.
Yale Bowl. Because the Yale Bowl influenced the design of a lot of other stadiums, like Michigan Stadium was modeled after
Penn.
the Yale Bowl.
Franklin Field.
No,
Harvard.
Harvard and Yale. The other 2 are other side of the country.
Stanford.
The other 2 are FBS schools.
Oh, okay.
Rose Bowl and the Los Angeles Coliseum.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, Yale Bowl.
Wow, Franklin Field isn't that the oldest stadium?
I don't know, maybe.
Franklin Field is 1895.
Yeah,
Wow,
but
how was that not
the
designated?
Yale Bowl, you think it's a pretty simple design, but it was revolutionary. What they did is they just dug a big hole in the ground, took the dirt out of the hole, and packed up all the stands, built the stands right on the hill. But that's how they designed Michigan, Stanford. I think the Rose Bowl also is
And the Romans.
Yeah, so go figure. So that's why it's historic.
Yeah.
But I guess as far as the leagues, there's a really good geographic spread of the schools in the FCS. They really touch about every corner of the country. Now, just up in the Northeast, you've got the Northeastern Conference, you've got the Patriot Conference. To some extent, you've got the Colonial Athletic Association, you've got the Ivy League schools. So really, there's a lot of nice, pretty nice schools up in that area that have had long-time programs. You mentioned New Hampshire. New Hampshire's had a really good season this year.
They actually had a good run where they were in the tournament like 16 years in a row. So, yeah, they've got a good program.
Yeah, I would say they probably are winning that conference again this year. So,
well, now that James Madison's out of it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's kind of interesting. What's the difference between FCS and FBS? Well, when James Madison was one of the latest ones that moved up. They've been up, I guess, 3 or 4 years now. Nowadays, if you want to move up, for instance, Jacksonville State University in Alabama just moved up to the FBS level this year. Well, starting this year, cost $9 million to move up, number one. That's the fee to move up, okay? You also have to guarantee an athletic budget of a certain level to support the program, okay? So you're probably not going to see quite as many teams moving up to FBS. Now, part of that, the other part of that formula is that you're not eligible to win your conference or to go to a bowl game for the first 5 years you move up. So think about it. Bowls are money games, okay? Your program's moving up. You're taking a $9 million hit just to move up. You've got to make sure your athletic budget's at a level to stay competitive, and you're not going to a bowl game, or you're not winning your conference championship. Because JMU, for instance, I think they've only lost 1 game if they've lost 1 this year, and they're not eligible to go.
But is that a punishment that you don't get to go to a bowl game? Because most schools lose money on bowl games.
I guess it would depend on what level bowl game. If you're flying across the country or something and the travel expenses are high, I don't know, what level bowl a JMU would be going to. I mean, because, of course, bowl games are looking for attendance, and, how many.
That's the big expense, is to go to a bowl game. You have to have a guarantee. Like the school is essentially responsible for purchasing whatever number of seats, a very significant number of seats, which is why if you're ever going to go to a bowl game, don't ever, ever, ever buy seats like right away when they're on sale. Wait. And they'll go for like an eighth of the price.
That's true. I think I went to a bowl game for like $15 last year.
But I mean, there are schools that were former FCS schools. For instance, Appalachian State Appalachian State has a huge following. I mean, yeah, it's a smaller school. It's up in the mountains, but they have a huge alumni base, and they're not used to going to like the big bowl games. And so if they get invited, they're probably going to turn out pretty well for those games. So anyway, it isn't something you tread lightly, trying to move up to FBS, because there's a lot that goes along with it. Okay. Now, you talk about travel expenses. Well, think about it. If you're going to the playoffs in the FCS level, you find out the Sunday before Thanksgiving that you're going to the playoffs and where you're going to that playoff game.
You're going to North Dakota State.
and then, yeah, I mean, try to find flights to Fargo. So it can be really costly, because you're talking about a team on less than a week's notice on Thanksgiving weekend traveling to another stadium. Okay. And that stadium, now obviously in the early things, you're not talking about your division winners or your league champions. These are probably the at-large teams that have been invited for that first weekend.
So Lloyd, they don't do their tournament like Division II and Division III. It's more of a regional. It's a truly regional thing. So if you make the Division III tournament, and you're a team from New England, you're playing another team from New England, New York, Pennsylvania. You're going to stay local.
I think they try to do that as much as possible, but if you're an at-large team, I don't know if you can do that. I mean, they might only have 4 at-large games on that first weekend, and then the league winners would play whoever wins that first weekend.
Okay. Yeah, so it's truly a national tournament.
Right. And so, that's one of the things that's a lot different as far as having the true playoff system. I don't think anybody can complain about it, saying that they didn't get invited. Now, that being said, you've got some conferences that tend to dominate, just like, SEC and, the Big Ten and so forth. Well, you've got what's called the Big Sky Conference. Okay. Big Sky Conference, as you figure, Montana, South Dakota, Montana State, Idaho, teams like that. And those teams are all power teams within the league. Usually year in and year out, you're going to have teams from North Dakota, 1 or 2 teams from North Dakota, 2 teams from Montana, possibly 2 teams this year from South Dakota that are all going to go to the playoffs. So obviously you've got a situation where there'll be a lot of weight, to having games up in that area of the country. You don't want to be the one that has to travel to Texas to play a game.
Yeah. So have you been to any of those
backyards?
Have you been to any of those stadiums up there, Lloyd? Because those are some interesting places. I've been to the Fargo Dome.
I've been to the Fargo Dome. I went this year to the Alurus Center, which is in Grand Forks, North Dakota. It's an indoor stadium. Yep. Obviously, the Fargo Dome's indoors. You also have one of the South Dakota stadiums is indoors. Okay,
you kind of need it for
stadiums in the FCS.
Yeah, you need it for those November, December games up in that area of the country. Absolutely.
Well, just to give you an idea, there's 6 dome stadiums in the FCS. One's at South Dakota, one's at North Dakota State, one's at Idaho State, one's at Idaho, one's at Northern Iowa, and the last one is up in Arizona. It's up in the mountains. And so those all 4 are dome stadiums, because obviously once they get past October, they're probably talking a foot of snow or more. So there are a lot more indoor stadiums at this level too than you see in the FBS. So anyway, like I say, the powers right now, the team to beat is South Dakota State. Okay. And yes, I've been to South Dakota State. It's in Brookings, South Dakota. Very nice stadium. It's only about they tore down the old stadium, built the new stadium. It's about 5 years old right now. And it's extremely nice stadium. It's an outdoor stadium. And yes, I went right after August to that stadium, because I wouldn't get caught, later on in the year having to do a cold weather stadium. So that would be one of the things. But right after that, you've got the North Dakota states. They're all like 1 through 5 in that area. Now, there are some good teams in other areas of the country. For instance, they've talked a lot about Holy Cross as a really good team this year. That's one that I'm hearing a lot about.
They started strong, but they've fallen off.
I'm sorry. Oh, they have? Okay.
Yeah.
But there's Richmond has had some good teams. Yep. Down in the South, you've got Furman is doing extremely well this year. They seem to be the team to beat down in the Southern Conference. As far as the Southern the 2 HBCU conferences, it's probably still Jackson State or Florida A&M would be the 2 teams that are probably going to make the playoffs from that. Well, that would win that league. I'm not sure who's doing well for the Middle East Athletic Conference, the one that's up the Atlantic coast. I'm not sure who the power teams are there. But they're, I would say also FCS football's a lot more wide open. You see a lot of high scores. It's not defensive duels in the FCS.
Dave, what you got?
Yeah. Now, one of the things that's really impacting the FCS this year that they're concerned about is, like every other thing in college football, what's happening? The portal. Okay. Think about it. If you're the stud at an FCS school and you have the opportunity to go to an FBS school, are you going to think about it? More than likely, because, you may get more attention. If you have an NIL situation where you can make money off yourself at those bigger schools. It's not that you don't have an NIL at a smaller school. It's just they're in smaller markets.
Well, it's a good thing for these kids, because if they can make a name and make an opportunity for themselves, then they can make some money.
Right. Yeah. But what I'm saying is it can hurt a power program.
Absolutely.
Like monopolizing the league for years and years because they lose, players to the portal. Yes.
So you mentioned a few times, you mentioned Jackson State, mentioned Deion Sanders. Of course, Deion Sanders, I want to say he was a coach at Jackson State for 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Not very long. Yeah, not very long.
Not a ton of time. And of course, now he's gone and he has the Cat's Meow in Colorado. Do you think that Deion Sanders was good for FCS in the long run or bad for FCS?
I wouldn't say he had that much impact on the FCS. I think on the HBCU level, they definitely brought a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to be defensive about Deion because he was, played in Atlanta, but he helped to upgrade their facilities hugely. I mean, he took a lot of money out of his pocket and helped pay for a large number of increases in the facilities at those schools. So, Jackson State, very frankly, I think they've lost 2 games this season. One of his assistants stayed behind and is coaching it there. And I know they've lost to Florida A&M, and I'm not sure who their other loss was to. So they're still a good team. Now, I actually went to the Celebration Bowl last year, and Deion, both years that they went to the Celebration Bowl that he was there, they went both years, they lost both years. So, he was very successful in bringing attention to, and I think that's helped him, the exposure. You had the College Game Day come to a Jackson State game, and I think that was great exposure for the school. So I think it would be much more so to those conferences than it would be to the FCS as a whole.
Let's talk a little bit about the HBCU schools, because that is a different experience altogether than a lot of the other places we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're talking small towns. They're not necessarily even in a town that has a TV market. So, because, you get to some of the state schools, they might be in a small town, that's 100 miles from a TV market. So, getting that type of exposure is a little bit harder for them.
I know our correspondent Richard Smith is a huge fan of the HBCU experience, going to games there. So,
oh yeah, and I mean, down here, I mean, it's a lot more. I mean, we have a lot of HBCU schools here in Atlanta. They're not necessarily the football teams, but we do have a lot of HBCU. So there's a lot of alumni that live in Atlanta, and they're very interested in the Florida States and the North Carolina A&T and those type of stadiums. So, so there is a good following down in the South for them. I mean, they're predominantly Southern schools.
Yeah,
now you do have Howard. You've got Howard as HBCU, obviously. Now it's not in one of those two conferences. I'm not sure what conference it's in. Do you know?
Howard, not off the top of my head, no.
I don't know if it's in the Colonial. Colonial's like Virginia, Maryland, that kind of area of the state.
Howard's in DC, isn't it?
Howard's in DC, but yeah.
Oh, it's in DC, but I'm just saying
the conference stretches up all the way into New England from Virginia. So
yeah.
I'm talking about the game day experience at the HBCU schools is a little different than some of the other ones.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can testify that the barbecues and the pregame tailgating is unbelievable. Okay, obviously you have bands that are unbelievable. I will tell you, it's not unusual you go to an HBCU game and people leave after halftime. They're there to see the band.
Right.
No offense to their team, but they're there to see the band, and for a good reason. I mean, they're just some spectacular. I've been to Alabama State, Southern. It's the Southern has the boom box of the South is the name of their, and they all have elaborate names. I can't even remember half of the names, but it's great experience. So
Howard
now,
is in the MEAC.
Yeah. The MEAC would be South Carolina State, Norfolk State. It may include Howard. I'm not sure. Most of them are state schools.
No, I just looked it up. They are in the MEAC.
Okay. I have not gone to a lot of MEAC games, only for the reason that we have a lot of correspondents in Virginia. I'm sure Gregory has probably been to some of them. And we have a lot of folks up in North Carolina that go to games. So they probably have covered those games.
Oh, yeah.
My focus really is trying to go places we haven't been in 20 years or we've never done before.
So let's talk about some of the places you've been to, Lloyd.
Okay.
What are some that stand out to you?
Well, I started out with Montana State University, and it is in Bozeman, and they have this stampede thing that they do when the team comes out on the field. I mean, it is like the rodeo show is starting. You've got people riding out on horses with banners, and the team charges out behind them, the band's on either side of them, and it's a terrific introduction to the team. I mean, it's really thrilling. They call it the Stampede. They also, South Dakota State University has got a lot of traditions like that. They have huge bands that are really good. And so that's one I've been interested in. The tailgating up there is really good too. Now, the tailgates I went to up in North Dakota, South Dakota, it was obviously August and September. I went at those tailgates in, late November. So I'm not sure how those might have been scaled back by the end of the season, but they really have some exciting things. Now, one of the things I just wanted to mention is they really have a strong network. They have what's called FCS Fans Nation, okay? And their podcast, they have a national podcast. They have a podcast for each league or conference. They have podcasts for each team in the league. And so it is a real network of, and I tell you, they are the fans in the FCS are just as rabid as they are in the SEC. I mean, when I get on their Facebook pages, I mean, they're just going at each other like everything. And so, their fan bases are extremely loyal. Because what are you going to do after football season in some of those areas? You're probably not coming out of your house for 6 months because of the weather. So, the seasons, are really a highlight, of the fall for those areas. So it's extremely loyal fan bases. Now, as far as some of the other stadiums, I guess one of the other ones that I liked a lot was out in Utah. And that was over, oh gosh, not Provo. Oh, if you hadn't asked me, I would have known it. The thing that's remarkable about that stadium is it faces this cliff. Well, this cliff, the sun hits that cliff as the sun sets. And it's just all these minerals, I guess, that are in that hill. And it just puts the most dramatic colors, pinks and purples and all. And the other side of the stadium, you've got the Great Salt Lake is beyond it. And so it's a really natural setting for the school. And so that one is another one I thought of as far as the scenery. Now, let's see, I was trying to think of other ones that were interesting. East Tennessee State is one of the newer stadiums. It's only about 4 years old. It's up in Johnson City, Tennessee. And if you've ever been to some of the league, I know Mark's been right down the street
Johnson City
because he was came down to do the College Woodback League in Johnson City. The Cardinal, well, they were the Cardinals, they're the Doughboys.
The Doughboys, yes.
And that's right down the street, from East Tennessee State University. Actually, that's their baseball field too. So playing the same field as
they do
as the Doughboys do.
Oh wow! Okay.
So those are some really nice natural settings as far as the schools. Like I say, I mean, there's West Coast schools. There's Cal Poly. There's Sacramento State. Let's see, UC Davis. They got some schools in Arizona. And there's 2 in Utah. So there's, a good spread of geographically throughout the country for them. But one of the things, Dave was asking as far as the difference, between FCS, FBS, I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the people who've played in an FCS school, okay? And see if you've heard of any of these. Michael Strahan, Carson Wentz.
Never heard of him.
Phil Sims.
Roma, yep.
Tony
Morehead
Romo.
State. Eastern
Steve McNair. Cooper Cup. Terrell Owens. Randy Moss.
Murray.
Adam Thierry. I believe
Murray,
he played in your neck of the woods, didn't he, Paul?
Not in college. He was one of the Dakota schools, but yeah.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. Jim
okay.
Garoppolo, Jerry Rice, Kurt Warner. All of those players
Northern
played
Iowa.
for an FCS school. So, that's a who's who of a lot of NFL players.
Art Scott.
I'm always telling
there's a
people
good
don't
spread.
sleep on D3. Magnify that 100 times for the FCS. How about you, Mark? You've been to a few FCS stadiums. Any of them stand out to you?
Yeah, I went to the Saluki Stadium. What I noticed there is that they actually get fans. I mean, it's I went to Indiana State. That's an FCS school, and no one went to Memorial Stadium to see the Sycamores because we were terrible. And there was one year that they made the playoffs, and we got all excited. That was a few years ago. But yeah, we always kind of look down at FCS because of our stadium. But no, you go to Saluki's, Youngstown State at the time was a really nice venue. And you're tailgating. You have these traditions with the band and the players marching onto the field. There is something called King Tut's Tomb, which initially was for the burial spot for the original dog mascot. They moved it over. I think they kept the remains at the old site. But yeah, there's just tradition where you touch this tomb. and they have statues of the Saluki. So, it looks like an actual football stadium because, like where I went to school, it looked like a glorified high school field. Same with Valparaiso. Another high school looking stadium is Morehead State, where Phil Simms quarterbacked. But if you go there during this time of year, you see the nice colors of the leaves in the mountains, which really, really makes it picturesque. And it's a small little town. They're getting some nice places down there to visit before or after the game. And that really kind of takes you back home. I would say a lot of the FCC schools that I went to, and that includes Princeton several years ago, both stadiums, the old one and the new one. And then, of course,
That's
I want to
right.
say
They just made a new one. I'm sorry.
Eastern Kentucky. They have one of these late 60s, early 70s stadiums that hasn't changed. If you walk inside the stadium's concourse, it's also there to house college classes, and there's rooms and buildings, and it's just a very late 60s, early 70s vibe. So yeah, a lot of the stadiums are unique. They all stand out. You can get the sense that they're smaller schools. You're not attending an IU game or Purdue or Notre Dame or even maybe a Ball State from where I am, or Ohio State. But yeah, certain spots, you can definitely say, hey, this is treated, just like the big boys. Definitely say Southern Illinois is up there.
The percentage of stadiums that are on campus is much higher in the FCS than the FBS, just because you can't, space is expensive on a college campus. If you're expanding your academics and all that, it's hard to find somewhere to put a 90,000 seat stadium. But when you're putting a 2 or 3,000 or 10,000 seat stadium, it's much easier to put that on a campus. And I think that's, one of the nice things about, the FCS schools.
Yeah. And it just depends where you are, like I said, Indiana State, that's about 1.5 miles away from campus. And there's always rumors they're trying to move it to campus and put it somewhere. I mean, I think Indiana State would be perfect for a 4,000, 5,000 seat stadium, football stadium. It would make a lot of sense. They don't get a lot of fans to the games. You go down to Southern Illinois, that's a different story. They get about 10,000 people to a game on a good day. So just depends where you are, depends how your program is. Like Eastern Illinois, you're talking like not a very fancy stadium, but Tony Romo played there. And I believe I think Garoppolo also played there.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, you got some NFL stars that have gone to your school, so you have that sense of pride. It's something to kind of push towards future generations. And it just depends the town you're in. If the town supports your football program and the football program and the school is nice to your town, it's the thing to do. And you're right, it can be a lot of fun tailgating for certain generations or even alumni. It's a tradition you do every Saturday. Why would you not? What else are you going to do in some of these towns that are far away from the nearest big city or interstate, even at times? So,
well, yeah. I mean, one of the examples that I could think of it's an FBS school and an FCS school that are like 10 miles apart. Okay, and that would be Washington State University and the University of Idaho, which is in Moscow. And they're literally about 8 miles apart. Now, Idaho moved up to the FBS, got beat to death, moved back down to the FCS, and now they're one of the top teams in the FCS. Now, the campus is literally, you can drive between the two campuses in 5 or 10 minutes. Now I don't know what the population as far as the enrollment is at Washington State, but it's a lot bigger than University of Idaho, I can tell you that. But the Kibbe Dome, it's the dome stadiums, we're talking about 15 to 20,000 as far as how big they are. Now, the one you would ask about traditions, and I do have to mention Northern Arizona University is in Flagstaff, up in the mountain, above Phoenix. And they do the Lumberjacks. Okay, they have a guy come out to the midfield before the game with an axe, dressed up like a lumberjack. And guess what? He knocks the stump and it falls in half. Okay. After a touchdown, they start a chainsaw and it cuts through some wood, and it makes little wafers, wood wafers, and they distribute those to people in the crowd. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting.
As long as the people don't start throwing them on the field.
Chainsaw in an indoor stadium, that's loud.
Oh, you're talking about traditions. Like some of the most legendary college rivalries are at this level. We had mentioned really briefly Harvard Yale.
Oh yeah.
One of the that's over 100 years old, and one of maybe they call it the game. So it's one of the biggest games out there. And like you said, Yale Stadium, Yale Bowl seats 65,000 people, and it is nearly sold out. It's not quite the draw it was back in the day, but they still fill up that place. And when it's at Harvard, Harvard seats about 33,000, and that's packed to the rafters for that game. And they've held it
you have
in neutral sites too. Yeah,
right around the holidays, you've got Southern plays Grambling, and they play in the Superdome, and it's a sellout. Again, I don't know after halftime how many people have left, but you're talking about a battle of the bands.
Battle of the bands there, huh? Ooh.
Yeah, so that's a party in New Orleans. So those would be the things that come to my mind as far as traditions and so forth. Just looking to see if there's anything else I could bring up that we haven't talked about. Oh, as far as some of the unique stadiums, they got a couple that come to mind. The first is actually Eastern Washington University, which is in Cheney, Washington. Their field is red, and it is called the Inferno. So when you cut your TV on and you see a red field, you know you're in Cheney, Washington.
Is it bright red, Lloyd, or is it I'm trying to picture that stadium in my mind. I can't do it. Is it bright?
It's called Ruse Stadium, and it's red turf with white, markings as far as the sideline and all that. Now the other one, and this one I have been to in person, is Central Arkansas. Okay, just north, a little bit north of Little Rock. Silver and purple alternating every 5 yards. 5 yards of silver, 5 yards of purple.
I think I'd fall down if I tried to run on that.
You want to, try to picture that one. You'll have to look at my review of that stadium. It was something else to see. I mean, your eyes definitely had to readjust after that game. But they said they were going to have to replace the turf, and they asked the guy if it cost any more to do colors than it did to do green, and they said no. And of course, I'm sure there was a deal there, like, okay, we'll do you a unique thing and give it to you the price for one color. Kind of put them on the map.
Why not, right? Gives your program a little notoriety there.
Well, and that game was 58-55 was the final score at the game. And they had three kickoffs in a row, returned 100 or more yards for a touchdown in that game. No defense whatsoever in that game. But you didn't leave till the game was over. So.
All right. So I guess that's a great place to wrap up our conversation at FCS. So Lloyd, thanks for joining us, and you always have some interesting travels on your agenda. You got anywhere coming up soon that you're heading to?
Well, I'm going to Utah. The 18th is my last game that I'm doing for the FCS this year. That's in St. George, Utah. It's like closer to Las Vegas than it is to Salt Lake City. And I thought, well, what's the temperature going to be there? Because it's really a desert setting. I looked, and it's like 40 degrees there in November. So I'm considering myself lucky on that. So I've really made it throughout the season, without freezing to death. Now, part of that's because I'm going to indoor stadiums, but next year, I really hadn't decided, what's new for next year. Because I don't know if you'd mentioned, after this season, we'll have reviewed every stadium in the FCS. Now, that being said, some of those reviews are 10 or more years old. So maybe next year I'll start to catch up some of those. I mean, these are areas where we don't have, reviewers. Very honestly.
If you're watching this podcast, you'd like to join the Stadium Journey team as a writer, we are always looking for talented writers.
Yeah, it's
even marginally
tough to get out
writers.
there.
Look at me.
Because I think Jason Clark had done most of our reviews in that area. I don't know if did you know Jason?
I knew of Jason.
Okay, he was the one that did the reviews for those Dakota area ones.
Well, if you just happen to hit it right, Lloyd, because if I'm recalling correctly, last weekend there were a lot of snow games out in the Rocky Mountains, were there not?
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, all right. So, Dan, where can our listeners follow you online?
Dan Law 83.
All right, and Mark, you got any stadium journeys planned? And where can our listeners follow your travels?
Yeah, you can follow me on Ballpark Hunter on Twitter and YouTube, and I have junior hockey, Ontario Hockey League, I believe the 18th and 19th, Windsor Spitfires and Sarnia Sting. A friend of mine has a cottage in Sarnia, says I can stay there. So looking forward to going to Canada. It's been too long, and I'm going to try something that apparently is a thing called Windsor style pizza.
When I asked you the question, Mark, I was not expecting you to say Canadian junior hockey.
Yeah. I'm not too far. I'm only 4 hours from Windsor, but yeah,
so you are closer to Canada than I am? That does not sound right.
It is. Windsor.
Going through Detroit.
I was hoping the Red Wings.
Funny.
The Red Wings are playing that day. They have a home game, but I think it's in Sweden. I was trying to get tickets or look for passes, and it wasn't popping up. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And
they're on a road. They're in Sweden. That's a road trip, all right.
They're playing over in Europe. I'm like, damn it, would like to check them out. So not gonna.
That's really. I've got to recover from the fact that I am the farthest one from Canada here. Oh no, Dan is, but.
Well, how far does it take for you to get to?
I can get to Sherbrooke. Is probably the closest city to me, and that probably takes good 4 hours, 4.5 hours.
Yeah, so about the same.
That's weird. Who would have guessed it, right? All
right.
Dave, where can our listeners follow you, and what do you got on the agenda?
Wilfrid Laurier Golden Hawks play in the OUA semifinals this weekend, and hopefully in the Yates Cup next weekend. So I will be there for that. Basketball season tips off tomorrow, and then got some hockey going on, of course, some Laurier hockey, but it's pretty much all Laurier until we meet again. Check out the premiere of the latest Obstructed Views on the Cleveland Browns. That's going to hit the YouTube waves on November 1st, and you can follow me. YouTube, Threads, Instagram, X, Twitter X, former Twitter, at Profan9.
And how far are you from Canada, Dave?
Not far enough.
How far are you from the States?
2 hours.
2 hours. Nice.
All right, let's see. What do I have coming up on the agenda? It is November, which is, as a PA announcer for me, this is my busiest month of the year. I think I have something like 23 games in the month of November. So let's see. This week, Thursday, UMass Dartmouth hockey. Friday is Brown hockey. Saturday, I'll be hitting Bryant football. And then the Big East soccer tournament, I will be doing some PA for them. Hopefully I'm not hacking a lung up like this.
And now,
I'll do it like Johnny Bush now.
Up to the.
Next week, is it next week? No, next week is the final week of UMass Dartmouth football. So I got some Brown. I got all kinds of Brown, Providence College, UMass Dartmouth. I'm announcing at one of those three pretty much every day the rest of the month. Follow my journeys on Twitter or Instagram or Threads at PuckmanRI. And remember, listeners, you can find all of our stadium reviews, our news items, and our other feature stories at the mothership, the website, stadiumjourney.com. Connect with us on our social media channels. The handle is at Stadium Journey. Like, follow, share. You can find audio versions of the Stadium Journey podcast by searching HIAC Talk Radio Network wherever you look for your favorite podcasts. If you're looking for video simulcasts of the Stadium Journey podcast, we're on Stadium Journey's YouTube page. Live streams, join us like our good friend Gregory did today, and our far away friend Lloyd also. Man, thanks for joining us, Lloyd. That made me happy. Made me smile.
Thank you.
No, the other Lloyd. He was a little farther than you, Lloyd. But thank you too, Lloyd. Thank you too, Lloyd. Thanks to all the Lloyds.
Cousin Lloyd.
Thanks to all the Lloyds who joined us. Anyway, every other Tuesday night, 7 Eastern at danlaw.tv. We'll be back in 2 weeks. That I believe is November 13th. And we will be discussing a topic to be determined. And as always, thanks everyone for your support and for listening to us all year long. Thanks to Lloyd for joining us and for the FCS conversation. For Dan, Mark, and Dave, this is Paul wishing you all safe stadium journeys and close games. Hope to see you all on the road again real soon. Be safe out there.